Tonight, let us drift together into the hush of Norse twilight, where Viking legends rise like mist over ancient fjords, and the northern lights weave their silent magic across the sky. In this peaceful voyage, old sagas will awaken, softly guiding us through worlds of gods, giants, and forgotten heroes. Many of you have asked how to support the channel. If you'd like to help our little storytelling harbor grow, you can now join the Patreon. The link rests below. And of course, if you haven't yet, feel free to like, share, and subscribe for more gentle journeys into mythology. But for now, breathe deeply, settle in, and let the ancient pines of Scandinavia whisper their stories as we set sail into the myths of the Vikings. In this mystical realm, steeped in twilight of legends, tale of the Vikings begins. These warriors and explorers, urging from their harsh, beautiful homeland, were destined to etch their names across the pages of history. As night descends upon the Norse lands, the air vibrates with the echoes of ancient lore. Here, in the flickering glow of the hearth, stories unfold of fierce Norsemen, ships cleaving through the icy waters with a hunger for discovery and conquest. From the 9th to the 11th centuries, their voyages carried them far beyond their native shores, from the frozen expanse of Greenland to the unknown wilds of North America. In the whispered tales carried through the winds of time, these seafaring adventurers are often cast as indomitable raiders. Their spirit, unyielding, is aflame with the pursuit of glory and riches. Their legacy, tapestry of battle and bravery, adventure and exploration, is woven into the very fabric of the North. Profound enigma, legacy that intertwines the threads of myth and reality into an eternal saga that resonates through the ages. In the nascent whisper of the cosmos, where existence itself was yet a mere shadow, two realms emerged from the silent void. Filheim, a domain shrouded in eternal fog. Muspel is with unquenchable fire. Between these dark contrasts of frost and flame, yawning abyss, fierce clash gave birth to Ymir, the first frost giants. This momentous event, beginning of an ageless conflict, movements of creation. From the misty vales of Filheim and the fiery breath, Muspel, the spark life ignited. Aud Umla, celestial cow of boundless nourishment, nurtured Ymir, birthed Buri, deity of beginnings. Thus, and the lineage of giants and gods, a pantheon destined to shape the fate of all realms. In this tumultuous cradle of existence, the saga of Bor and his valiant sons, Odin, Vili, and Ve, folded. Big struggle against Ymir, titan of primordial frost, reshaped the universe. Ymir's colossal form, vanquished in cosmic combat, gave rise to the world. His flesh molded into the earth, his bones the towering mountains, his blood the vast seas. From the earth sprang the dwarfs, stalwart and industrious, toiled beneath the sky. Once Ymir's skull, upheld at each corner by the dwarfs, Northri, Sudri, Hostri, and Westri, Ymir's lustrous hair transformed into the verdant trees and bushes. His brow became red. Formidable walls that sheltered the gods and enclosed Midgard, bastion of humanity. Yet, from the aftermath of Ymir's fall, one giant, Bergamir, endured. He fled to the far reaches of the universe, forging Jotunheim, a new realm for giants, a testament to the unending cycle of creation and destruction. The gods, in their unceasing labor, crafted the heavens from Ymir's remains. His brains, scattered across the sky, formed the brooding clouds, while Surtur's fiery sparks were harnessed to create the stars. The sun and moon were splendid in their golden chariots, and drawn by the noble steeds, Arvakar. And Alsvin embarked upon their eternal voyage across the sky, heralding the rhythm of day and night. Thus was born the grand narrative of the world, a saga of celestial origins and enduring legacies, with the whispers of the gods and the echoes of giants resonate across the boundless expanse of time and space. The early light of a world freshly carved from the chaos of creation, Odin, the All-Father and supreme deity, traversed the new earth with his brethren. Honir, a canopy formed by Ymir's transformed essence. The oceans and skies reveling in majesty of their handiwork, this serene landscape. Profound silence lingered, emptiness yearning for the breath of life, wandering along the ocean's edge, where the waves whispered secrets to the shore, chanced upon 2 pieces of driftwood, gifts of the sea, shaped by time and tide, and spark flickered within, letting a vision of profound Honir, casting his shadow upon one, bestowed it upon the outline of humanity, while Loki, with his mischievous charm, animated the other, making it pirouette in the golden sunlight. Odin's turn, his breath carrying the essence of divinity, to breathe life into the inert wood. As his breath touched the first piece, its rough bark receded, revealing a woman, her form still and serene, radiant with untapped potential. To the second, Odin's exhalation wrought a similar transformation, unveiling a man equally poised on the brink of life. Odin's gift, these wooden figures awakened to a newfound existence. Loki, the shapeshifter, imbued the woman with the vibrancy of youth, clarity of understanding, and the richness of the senses. She arose, a living embodiment of their divine crown, her eyes alight with wonder. Loki then bestowed upon the man the vigor of life and the same depth of perception and sensation, enabling him to rise and stand beside his companion. Honir, completing their transformation, granted them the power of speech, the final flourish to their humanity. With this, very first humans, their hands intertwined, step forward into the uncharted world, barking on a journey destined to be woven into the annals of time. His commanding voice, origins from the driftwood, he draped his cloak over Elm, a symbol of protection and care, entrusting her to Ash's guardianship. Bond believed by the Vikings, the eternal, spanning the river of time. Asgard, averred as the enclosure of the gods, ruled by Odin, stood majestically above the clouds, on Yggdrasil, a realm of unparalleled peace and splendor, overlooking Midgard. Its most glorious palace, Gladsym, housed the golden thrones of the 12 principal deities, radiating like the sun itself. Resplendent palace, dedicated to the goddesses, reflected Asgard's golden era. Here, symbols of gold, divine laws were decreed, ensuring eternal harmony. Forge, central to Asgard's grandeur, crafted tools and weapons for its magnificent constructions, while the breathtaking Bifrost, or Rainbow Bridge, arched over Midgard, a dazzling spectacle. Ida Vale, part of Asgard, was a lush landscape of rolling hills and palaces, silver and sparkling gems. The Aesir, gods of noble spirit, dwelt central to the myriad legends, yet the vanilla also played a part in this celestial narrative. Past conflicts between these divine families led to a unity strengthened by exchanged hostages, symbolizing a profound sacrifice and the harmonious coexistence of these 2 godly lineages. Yggdrasil, the world ash, soars as an eternal guardian of the cosmos, its immense branches embracing all 9 realms, binding them in a network of life and destiny. The core of this majestic tree, 3 powerful sisters, as the fates meticulously tend to its roots, each drawing life from 3 mystical wells. One root descends into Asgard, a divine realm of the gods. Nourished by the Well of Weird, named after the eldest of the Norns, another route reaches into the frosty realm Jotunheim, home to the frost giants, where it draws sustenance from the well of Mimir, god whose wisdom endures in his surviving head, alive by enchanted herbs and waters. The third route ventures into Filheim, enduring hardships near Vergelmire, a fountain of black water that exudes the aroma of decay. Here, the fearsome dragon, Nithog, relentlessly gnaws at the root, a threat potent enough to wither any other tree. Yggdrasil stands unwavering, a timeless beacon linking each world and facilitating communication across realms. Its name, the steed of Odin, hints at dark undertones, entwined with a story of sacrifice and discovery. His quest for the secrets of ruins, the ancient symbols of wisdom and power, Odin underwent a grueling sacrifice. He hung himself from Yggdrasil's bow. Enduring 9 excruciating days and nights, his anguished cries resounding across the realms. This ordeal, fulfilled with agony, granted Odin unparalleled mastery over the magical ruins, securing his position as the sole bearer of this profound knowledge. His newfound wisdom, shared among his allies, elevated his status to that of legend. Odin's sovereignty extended across the 9 realms, from the celestial heights of Asgard to the netherworld of Hel. Between these extremes were the domains of Vanir in Vanaheim, tall realm of Midgard, the lands of the light and dark elves, dwarfs, frost and hill giants, and the fiery giants of Muspel. Asgard, most illustrious of these worlds, is the stage upon which our story unfolds. A realm of gods and legends, ancient in the age of Asgard. Odin reigned at the head of the 9 worlds of Yggdrasil. He was a fair man, well liked by all, and his kingdom of Asgard was a magnificent place. Time stood still. Youth and the pleasures of nature abounded. Odin was also called Odin, for he was the father of all men and gods. He reigned high on his throne, overlooking each of the worlds. And when the impulse struck him, Odin disguised himself and went among the gods and people of the other worlds, seeking to understand their activities. Odin appeared in many forms. He was often recognized, for he had just one eye. That eye, Odin's throne in Asgard, stood not merely as a seat of power, as a vantage point, from where he watched over the earthly realm and the divine activities of Asgard. Unlike the brawny warriors of legend, Odin's strength lay in his profound wisdom. Perched upon his shoulders were 2 ravens, embodiment of thought and the essence of memory. These ravens were his link to the world beyond, whispering secrets of the land into his ear. In his hand, he wielded a spear of unbreakable will, crafted by the skilled hands of dwarves. Upon his finger, he wore a ring, symbolizing the unending cycle of life. At his feet, 2 loyals, Jerry and Freki, guardians of his majestic presence, assured success in every hunt. Odin's existence was a tapestry of contrasts, blurring the lines between the living and the ethereal on the battlefield. He appeared as an enigmatic old man, his presence marked by the company of ravens, wolves, and the Valkyries, the choosers of the slain, guiding the souls of fallen warriors to the grandeur of Valhalla. Captain's majestic palace in Asgard was a sight to behold, with 500 doors wide enough for armies to pass. Its walls shimmered with polished spears, and its roof, a sea of golden shields, glowed like the sun. Here, the warriors favored by Odin indulged in endless feasts and tested their might in unmatched feats of arms, their wounds healing instantaneously under Valhalla's enchantment. Beside Odin was Frigga, the revered mother goddess, his wife and partner, weaving the fate of the world with her ethereal touch. Frigga, the goddess of the atmosphere, was adored both on Earth and in Asgard, presence as nurturing as nature itself. In this divine realm, with the passage of time, bowed to the wills of the gods, Odin and Frigga raised their children. Among them was Thor, boisterous god of thunder, with his fiery hair and spirited heart. Dwelling in his grand castle, Balder, the fairest and kindest of all, radiated purity, while Hodor, blind yet content, joy in the simple pleasures of existence. Tyr, brave god of war, traveled far and wide, his legacy etched into every sword. Guarding Asgard's boundaries was Heimdall, the vigilant watcher, forever alert to the stirrings of enemies. His home, near the Rainbow Bridge, Bifrost, stood as a testament to his eternal vigilance. Asgard held its secrets. Loki, being of trickery and mischief, wove his plots, his nature a stark contrast to the harmonious realm. His kinship with Odin was a matter of debate, but his thirst for chaos was undeniable. Thus, in the heart of Yggdrasil, whirled at the story of Odin, Frigga, pantheon of North gods unfolded, a saga of power, wisdom, and of cosmic forces. Loki was a trickster, a good-looking rascal of a man whose eyes burned with mischief of the most dangerous kind. His handsome exterior housed a soul, was black and rotten. For many years he lived happily in Asgard, amusing the gods and causing no real trouble other than that of a clown or a fool. And so he was tolerated there and allowed to marry and have children. Loki was married to Sigyn, and his children were more terrible than him. He already had 3 children by an ogress. One a wolf called Fenris, another a serpent or dragon, Jormungandr, who overtook Midgard as he grew, and the third, dark, beautiful child called Hel. She was to become the queen of the underworld, and she had control over every man and woman who entered her gates. Now Loki's trickery was well known in Asgard and across the 9 worlds. His story inextricably linked with that of the other gods, for he involved himself in most events in their lives, offering advice and annoying. Some of his mischief was amusing, some was dangerous. One evening, when another god, Freya, became part of Asgard, Loki spied her marvelous necklace, golden symbol fruitlessness of the earth, which she wore about her slender neck. At all times, Loki coveted this necklace, and he found he could not sleep until he had it in his possession. So it was that he crept one night into her chamber, bent over as if to remove it. Finding that her position in sleep made this feat impossible, he turned himself into a small flea, and springing under the bedclothes, he bit the lovely goddess so that she turned in her sleep. Loki then returned to his shape. Clasp of the necklace he removed, without losing the sound of Loki. The sound so slight, only the great watchman of the gods could have heard it. He traveled immediately to the palace to investigate. He saw Loki leaving with the necklace, and soon caught up with him, his sword in order to remove the thief's head. Loki immediately changed himself into a thin blue flame. Quick as a flash, Heimdall became a cloud and sent sheath of rain in order to douse the flame. Loki quickly became a polar bear and opened his jaws to swallow up the water, whereupon Heimdall turned himself into a bear and attacked the hapless trickster. Loki became a seal, and then, once again, Heimdall transformed himself into the same form as Loki, and the two fought for many hours before Heimdall showed his worth, and won the necklace from Loki. There is another story told of Loki, whose tricks were not always used to ill effect. One day, Giant and a peasant sat together playing a game. There were bets laid on the outcome of the game, and the Giant, one having little to offer, had pledged his only son, and the Giant promised to return the following day to claim his prize. The peasant returned to his wife, admitted his shameful problem. Together they prayed to Odin, who answered their prayers and came down to earth. He changed the peasant's boy into a tiny grain of wheat and hid a sheaf grain in the center of a large wheat field. The giant was wiser than all father had given him credit for, and when he discovered the boy missing from the peasant's home, he walked straight to the wheat field, located the shaft of wheat, and plucked out the grain was the boy. He was just about to eat it when Odin heard the child's cry and returned to earth once again. He snatched the grain from the hand of the giant and transformed the boy to his human form once again. He apologized to the peasants and left them, saying that there was no more he could do for them. The giant roared and shouted. He had been deceived, and he vowed that he would return the following day, blame his prize. Once again, the peasants prayed, this time to Honir, who graciously came to earth and changed the boy into a soft piece of down, which he hid in the breast of a swan, glided easily across the stream by the peasant's home. It was not long before the giant returned, and he took only a few moments to guess what had happened to the boy. Grasping the swan by the neck, he made as if the bite of its head. When Honir heard the boy's cries and returned to earth, he returned the boy to his parents, disappeared, explaining that he had done all he could. Two peasants were in great despair. The giant promised that he would return the following day to claim his prize. Pray then to Loki, who came down to them at once, carrying the boy out to sea and hiding him inside an egg in the roe of a flounder. Giant spied Loki returning from his task, and he guessed at once where the peasant boy was being held. He captured a boat at once to the sea with his fishing rod in hand, and soon enough he captured the flounder. Fish was opened, and the egg extract, and suddenly Loki reappeared and plucked the egg from the giant's hand, transforming it once again into the boy who was sent running home to his parents. Loki set upon the giant then, taking off his leg, beating him about the head. The giant had powers of his own, and he was able to heal himself at once, gaining his form and making for the home of the peasants. He was on just the brink of capturing the boy, and Loki used a clever ploy, chopped off the leg of the giant, threw it away so that it could not be rejoined. He placed a spear of metal where the leg had been, for it was well known that even magic could not cross a metal barrier. The giant was slain at last, and the peasants rejoiced, praising Loki so that he became inflated with pride. Loki appears many more times in the stories of Asgard, and his name was often on the tongue of its inhabitants. One fine day, Odin, Loki, and Honir wandered throughout the worlds on one of their regular missions, just to see that all was well. As they traveled, they grew hungry, and they finally stopped and ordered to cook an ox to give them sustenance to carry on. A fine ox was chosen from a herd in a field, and it was duly slain and placed on a spit over roaring flames after several hours. The ox was removed from the fire. 3 wanderers licked their lips, and they prepared for their meal. Honir cut into the beef and stalked under the crisp exterior. The beef was raw through and through. Fresh blood dripped onto the fire. Honir looked puzzled, placed the beef to the spit, motioned to his friends that they could not eat just yet. The fire was built up once more, and the 3 men waited for another hour or so, before removing the beef from the spit once more, this time wooden, cut into the meat. It was uncooked. Suddenly there was movement in the trees and a rush of wings. There, the tree, overlooking their fire, sat a great eagle. He sat looking down at them with great satisfaction. "Our meat is uncooked," Odin said helplessly, pointing to the fire. "The meat will remain uncooked," said the eagle, "until I ordain it to be cooked." 3 travelers looked at the eagle with interest. It was not often that guards were challenged, and they waited to hear the reason. "Please, could you allow our meat to cook?" "I shall do so. Eat my fill, for you partake from the ox." Odin nodded, agreed. He was famished by hunger now, and he was determined to have some of this fine piece of ox. Within 5 minutes, the beef was cooked, and with a flurry of feathers, the eagle landed by the fire, stirring up a great cloud of ashes to eat. Moments later, there was silence. The eagle had returned to the tree, and the spit was empty. He in particular was enraged by this act. He was accustomed to being the trickster, and was not used to having tricks played on him. "Who are you?" called out angrily, to which the eagle only laughed and shrugged. He grabbed a burning log and made towards the eagle, who only ducked but Loki, till he was quite reddened with fury. Finally, Eagle swooped down, ducked his talons into the log, which Loki held, drawing it up into the air as he flew. He struggled to let go of the wood. He was unable to free himself. His fingers clutched the branch. Nothing he could do would loosen them. "Let me down!" he cried, angrily kicking. His feet and shouting, Eagle flew higher, turning and soaring through the air and terrifying Loki, so that he closed his eyes in fear. When at last the eagle sensed that his prisoner could take no more, he spoke. "I am Thiazi, the great giant. I will let you loose only if you swear to deliver the goddess Ethan. To me, you must lure her beyond the walls of Asgard, where I can catch her, and she must bring with her the basket of apples." Loki considered this for a moment, agreed. Far below him, Odin and Honir watched, never imagining the treachery of which Loki was capable. In a moment, Loki was set safely on the ground. For a moment, he sat there, stunned. Odin and Honir reached his side and asked him what had passed with the eagle. Loki told them nothing. The three men returned to Asgard. Loki knew that the promise he had made to Thiazi was the worst he could have possibly made. For without the golden apples of Ethan, the ravages of time would take their toll on the occupants of Asgard, and he, Loki, alone would be responsible for the aging and eventual death of each and every one of them. He paced and paced the gardens where Ethan worked happily, her sweet rays bringing a nuance of spring to all she touched. But as much as Loki realized the trouble he would cause by luring Ethan from Asgard, he knew that there was more trouble if he did not satisfy his solemn oath to Thiazi. And so, it was on that fateful day, approached Ethan, who was curled up by a bed of flowers. Ethan smiled innocently at Loki, began to explain how the flowers responded to our love, and how all growing things could benefit from praise and care. Loki smiled briefly, interrupted. "Come, Ethan," he said carelessly. "Did you know that yesterday, Odin, I saw a tree bearing enchanted apples? Just like your own." Ethan laughed. "Not possible," she said brightly, knowing that her own golden apples were unique. They did not come from any tree, peered magically in her basket. One was eaten, another quickly took its place, so that there was an eternal supply of youth. But Loki talked to Ethan. He managed to convince her that another source of apples would be a fine thing, for what should transpire if something were to happen to Ethan's basket. "Bring your basket," he said slyly. "You'll see that the apples are much the same." Ethan finally agreed to travel with Loki to see the tree, and they set out for the walls of Asgard. No sooner had Ethan stepped outside, and Thiazi swept down, but Ching-Her in his talons carried her away. There went basket of apples. Loki skulked inside the walls of Asgard and mentioned nothing of what had happened. Soon it was discovered that Ethan was missing, and the guards became greatly distressed within a few days. Wrinkles appeared on the gods' youthful cheeks. When their backs became hunched with age, they hardly recognized one another, and as the bloom of youth disappeared, so did their happiness. Asgard was a changed place. Everyone called out for the return of Ethan. Heimdall admitted he had seen her with Loki on the fateful day of her disappearance, and at once, Odin and his men set out to find the trickster. Loki admitted what had happened, and the rage of Odin was so great that Loki volunteered to see about the return of Ethan himself. Loki sat alone, concerned by the task that lay ahead of him. How was he to travel to the skies where Thiazi lived as an eagle? Loki could take many forms when the need arose. He had not yet mastered the art of flying, and he found himself in a quandary, which even his quick wits could not find a way out of. Suddenly, it came to him. Freya's coat. Freya's coat of feathers. Freya agreed at once to the loan of her hawk coat, for she was frightened by the wrinkles which cut deeply into her face, and without her legendary beauty, she would never be able to attract the souls of the warriors to her domain. And so Loki set out wearing Freya's coat until he found the giant's castle. There sat Ethan. She was alone. The Aziz's daughter, Skadi, had been watching the goddess. Because she was so serene and presented no threat of escape, Skadi had gone off for a walk, leaving Ethan to sit quietly, clutching her basket of apples. Loki swooped down and spoke quietly to Ethan. "Ethan, it's me, Loki," he said. "Listen carefully. I am to rescue you. You must hold your basket to you, and I will turn you into a hazelnut, lift you into the sky." Asgard trusting, Ethan nodded her head, and soon found herself high in the air with Loki the Hulk. Just at that moment, Skadi returned, and it took her no time at all to realize what had just happened. She called out to her father, who was fishing several miles away, and he returned at once, rowing like a crazed person in order to reach his daughter. Once, he saw Loki carrying away the nut, and he transformed himself into the giant eagle in order to give chase. Loki was just within reach of the gates of Asgard when the eagle approached. From Asgard the gods watched with horror, and Freya cried, "My hawk will never outfly an eagle." And so the gods got to work, and they directed Tyr to gather a great pile of wood shavings, which they set alight. Tyr held up the burning shavings, and as the eagle flew across, he touched it to him, and the giant bird burst into flames, his feather coat melting off until the giant fell helplessly to the ground, where he was burnt. Rush of flames, but beside him stood Loki, trembling and frightened, but complete. There was Ethan, mercifully unharmed by the chase, by the blast of flames. She carefully handed each of the gods an apple. Youth was once more restored. Just as the gods began to settle back into their daily routines, there came a shriek. From the walls stood Skadi, crying out for her father, who was nothing more than two burning embers. She cried out for vengeance. Odin approached her and settled her down, pointing out that it had been her father who had begun this unhappy episode. It was finally agreed that Skadi would choose a god as her husband, in order that she would have a man to take care of her. She was to choose the one she wanted by looking his feet. A screen was erect. Each man in Asgard was bidden to walk past the screen so that she could see their feet, choosing those that were the cleanest. Unpure as white, Skadi looked smug, sure that she had picked bolder, for no one else could have such clean, white feet. But when the screen was removed, was Njord Thor, whose feet were washed clean on the sands of the ocean each day. And so it was that the girl of the mountains married the god of the sea, and the two came together for all eternity. The Aziz embers were carried to the sky by Loki in Freya's coat, and there they sit today. The twin stars of the Azi, which bear his name, and appear each night in the northern skies. In the hall of Volsungs, a wedding took place. This was the wedding of Saini, who was to marry the king of Gothland, called Siggeir. Saini was the twin sister of Sigmund, who supported her marriage along with everyone in the kingdom. In the hall of the Volsungs was an unusual sight. Hall itself was a huge living oak tree whose branches supported him. The roof. This oak tree was called Branstock, brought good luck to the Volsungs, who tended it carefully. This day of the wedding feast, there were great festivities underway. Great platters of food groaned on tables. Mead was passed around in horns as the joyful crowd toasted the health of the new couple. Suddenly, there was silence, for in the midst of the crowd appeared a stranger with a wide, brimmed hat. He had only one eye, and his feet were dirtied from his travels. In his hand, he carried a specular sword, glinted and shone in the light as if it were made of pure gold. He walked purposefully towards Branstock, plunged the sword into the trunk of the tree without murmuring a word. He turned and addressed the crowd. "Whosoever draws this sword from the tree, have it as a gift from me. Whosoever has as his own, my sword will have victory in every battle he fights." The stranger left the room and there was silence. There was no doubt in any one of their minds that the great Odin had been amongst them. Each of the men in the group stood up, longing for a chance to pull out the sword. Every great Viking warrior took his turn, while the others chattered excitedly. By one sword, one man stood among them, a small Sigmund. He stood and walked towards the sword, silent. Each of King Volsung's 9 sons had failed, as had the king himself. No one doubted that this young man would do so as well. Sigmund laid his hands on the hilt of the sword, and with a mighty pull, brought it from the trunk of the tree with ease. The sword became Sigmund's property, and as he grew older, he used it often, becoming the greatest Viking warrior. Evo walls came. Then day came, and Sigmund had reached the final years of his life. He lay dying on a field, the last of the Volsungs line, as he spoke his final words. His beloved wife Heordis, with his face, and wept over her dear husband. With Odin once again, he whispered to Heordis, "I know it was he, because my sword could not match the mighty spear he carried. He has come to bring me to Valhalla. Dear one, I am ready to go." And rushed away Heordis' tears. "Fear not, little one," he said quietly, "for in your womb, Harry, my son, and he will be the greatest warrior ever known. But still, any and all song, my sword, and he shall reign supreme." Sigmund, his wife, Heordis, went on to marry. Son of the King of Denmark, a man called Ulf, who did not know the child she carried belonged to Sigmund. She gave birth, great festivities. The boy who was born was called Sigurd. It is here that this story joins another. For once, just 3 or 4 years before Sigurd became a youth and an apprentice to a smithy, Odin, Honir, and Loki were walking in Midgard, came across a burbling stream rich with salmon and other fine fish. As they prepared to catch one for their meal, they were startled by the movement of an otter who was just waking at the side of the stream. He grabbed the otter, killed it. Fire was quickly built, while the otter was skinned greedily, and with the pelt of the otter over their backs, they made their way towards a cabin who was just peeking from between the trees. Knocked at the door or startled, we met an angry man who was summoning his thralls to help him tie up these 3 strangers. Odin stepped forward. "Do you not know that passers-by are to be treated with kindness and given a bet? Do you not know that Odin has decreed this?" Odin was in his customary disguise, and the angry stranger had no idea who he was dealing with. The stranger, whose name was Creedmar, scowled at Odin and said, "Not when they have murdered my son." Creedmar's son, been a form shifter, and had just finished a fine meal of salmon, which he had caught in the shape of an otter. He had been murdered before he could become a man again. Loki and Odin apologized profusely and offered to do anything in their power to repay Creedmar. "One thing you can do," said Creedmar. "That is to fill my son's otter belt with gold. Cover every hair on its back. I cannot see it at all. 3 men agreed and set out at once for a waterfall, where they knew that a dwarf by the name of Anvari lived, as a sharp, toothed pike, and guarded a magnificent treasure of gold and jewels. With characteristic cunning, Loki managed to divert the fish, and as Anvari was changed back into a dwarf to retrieve the treasure, Loki and Odin gathered together the splendid gold brooches, rings, necklaces, and ornaments. And as they made way to leave, they saw something glinting from the pocket of the trembling dwarf, said Loki. "This," said Anvari, "this you cannot have. This ring has a curse on it. Once it leaves my care, disaster." Loki had little fear of curses and enchantment. He could rival the best with his own. He snatched the ring from the dwarf, and the 3 men made their way back to the cabin. I stuffed the pelt of Kritmar's son and covered the body with more gold. I finished. Kritmar came to inspect. I cried at once. "I see a whisker still uncovered. You have failed in your task, and I will kill you all." Ugi stepped forward and bent down on his knee. "Please, sir," he said graciously. "I have this one ring here, which will cover the hair. It holds an evil curse, and I do not wish it upon you or your family." "Give me the ring," snarled Kritmar, "and all of you be off." The 3 travelers continued on their way and soon forgot about Kretmar and his son. Just moments after they left, the curse began to take effect. Kretmar had 2 more sons. One called Fafnir also changed the shape. Another called Regin was away, working as a blacksmith in Denmark. He had as his pupil none other than Sigurd, son of Sigmund. Fafnir, however, lived at home. On the very day that the curse fell upon his father, in his eye covered the treasure, filled his brother's pelt. A few days later, he murdered his own father, and changing shape, he became a monstrous dragon, hiding himself away in a cave and guarding his magnificent treasure. Now raging, far away from the treasure, as part of the curse, Gund coveted himself, and he began to hatch a plan to have it returned. He assessed the young Sigurd, who was working with him, and noticing his bravery and his amazing skill with arms, he decided to approach him to see if he would fight the dragon. "Sigurd," he said slyly, "I noticed that you have come of an age, and you may want to practice some of your great father's skills. There is a dragon I know of, one who guards a treasure. She would like to test those skills." Sigurd was just young enough to be tempted by the idea of fighting a dragon, and he went off into the forest the following day to find a horse. As he walked through the trees where the horses ran free, he met an elderly man, one with just one, who suggested that Sigurd test the horses before he made his selection. And so together, Sigurd and the old man sent the horses into a nearby river. All of the horses swam easily to the other side, and then galloped off into the distance. Only one horse returned, the lustrous grey stallion with a powerful body, fine, intelligent eyes. "Take that horse," said the old man. "He is a descendant of Odin's own horse. He will care for you in times of trouble." But the old man disappeared, leaving Sigurd in no doubt as to who he had just seen. Turning to the horse, he stroked it and was rewarded by a happy snort. "I'll call you Granny," he said to the horse. "Together we shall kill a dragon." Sigurd returned to Ragen, tell him of his new horse, and to request that the blacksmith make him a great sword with which to kill the dragon. He began working, toiling over the hot forge. The sword was brought forth, gleaming. Sigurd lifted it into his hands, and then laid a heavy blow on the anvil. The sword broke into 1,000 tiny pieces, and Regan looked at Sigurd in surprise. He went to the forge once again, and another sword was made, this one stronger, and with a gleam that was even brighter than the first. Again, Sigurd lifted the sword and brought it down on the anvil, shattered into tiny pieces. Regan shook his head. began work on a third sword. "Go home, Sigurd. I have another for you to try tomorrow." Sigurd was puzzled by the course of events, and a seed of doubt entered his mind about the ambitions of his tutor. Regin seemed very keen to have the dragon slain, and Sigurd wondered why, approached his mother, and explained the whole story to her. Dorda said, "My son, there is a secret of which you are not aware of. You are not the son of the man you think your father are, the son of King Sigmund. Just before he died, he presented me with the pieces of this sword, which you may have forged to protect you. This sword will slay your dragon, if that is what you wish, and this same sword will protect you from whatever Rachel has in store." The following day, Sigurd returned to the smithy with the sword, and it was placed in the fire by Rachel. Suddenly there was a flash of bright light, and the sword emerged of its own accord, glittering in the firelight like a crystal. Sigurd reached for the sword and brought it down on the anvil. The anvil split in two, and the gleam was reflected in the eyes of Regin. He could think of nothing now but the treasure, and so it was that two gentlemen set off to reach the cave of the dragon. Regin turned to Sigurd. "And slay this dragon. There will be treasure for us both. Whatever you do, don't let his blood touch you, for you will burn for certain." Sigurd set off in the direction of the dragon, and as he approached, the stranger from the woods appeared to him once again. With that, the one-eyed man disappeared. Sigurd did as he was bid. He struck the great dragon from behind, slaying him at once, cut a hole in the dragon's neck, and stripping off his clothes, he bathed in the dragon's blood, until every part of his body was covered, except for a tiny spot between the shoulder blades, where a piece of heather had rested. Gathering up the treasure, he returned to Regin, who was delighted to hear of the spoils. "One more favor, Sigurd," he asked. "Cut out the heart of the dragon, so that I may eat it. What of my brother may live on in me?" Sigurd returned to the dragon, and he did what was asked, as he roasted the heart over a fire. A drop of blood fell in his hand. To smoke. Suddenly, began to hear voices. Looking around, he saw no people. Voices persisted. It was that moment that Sigurd realized that he could hear the birds speaking to one another, and they were discussing him. Sigurd listened while they spoke of Regin's treachery, and how foolish he was to have trusted him. When Sigurd looked up, was Regin, ready to strike him down with his mighty sword. Sigurd beheaded the blacksmith with one swing, and so it was. But Sigurd gathered up the treasure as he put the same cursed ring in his pocket. He heard the bird say, "He must not take the cursed ring. Does the great Sigurd not know what will happen if he does?" But shrugging their words aside, Sigurd made off. For as he traveled, he saw in the distance a fine castle surrounded by white light, coaxed his horse up and over the light, and landed on the marble flagstones of the castle courtyard. Dismounting, secretly laid down his sword and entered the castle. There, in the hallway, knight in shining armor, Sigurd quietly reached towards the knight's helmet and lifted it gently off, curious to see what great warrior lay in their state. But to his great surprise, a tumble of hair fell out from beneath the helmet, and there lay an exquisite girl prodded her, and as if by magic, her armor disappeared and her eyes opened. This girl caught eyes with Sigurd, came between them a feeling that happens most infrequently. It was a love with such intensity that Sigurd knew at once that she was a part of him, and he her. He slipped his hand into his pocket and withdrew the ring, slipping it onto her finger. Some say this girl was called Brunhilde, and that she was the daughter of Odin. Others say she was born of Sigurd's need, for was in truth part of himself. Whoever she was, she became a part of Sigurd's life, and a part of a curse he had just placed on her slender finger. That, and the other tales of Sigurd and his adventures, is another story altogether. Thor was one of the 12 principal deities of Asgard, and he lived in the splendid realm of Thrudvang, where he built a palace called Ilskanir. Here, he lived as god of thunder, and his name was invoked more than any other in the age of the Vikings. Thor was the protector. The fine figure of a man with glowing eyes, firm muscles, and a red beard made him instantly recognizable. He became known across the worlds for his great hammer, Mjolnir, which means the crusher, was forged by the Dark Elves. This hammer, together with Thor's strength and his terrible temper, made him the fiercest god of Asgard, and a personification of brute force. Thor was also god of Mjolnir, war. Because of his popularity, he soon grew to embody the forces of agriculture and became a symbol of the earth itself. He is remembered throughout the world on the 4th day of every week, Thursday or Thor's Day. Thor was married to Sif, whose long golden hair was her one great pride, felt to her like a ray of sunlight, and it was the color of ripe corn silk in the summer meadows. As she brushed it, it glinted in the light and became a symbol of great beauty across Asgard. One day, a glistening cascade of her hair caught the eye of Loki. He wondered then how he could ever have imagined living without it. He thought about that hair all day and all throughout the night. And then, just as the moon reached her pinnacle in the midnight sky, Loki leapt to his feet and made for Sith's bedchamber, where he knew he would find her sleeping, thus long shadows into the sleeping goddess's delicately furnished room. And it was easy for the fleet-footed Loki to steal in and set to work. Loki crept to the side of Sith's bed very gently, so that he did not disturb her, withdrew a pair of great shears from his cloak, cut her long veil of hair from her head, winding the tresses around his arm. He darted from the room once again, and there was silence. Until, that is, Sif awoke to discover the travesty that had occurred. Her shrieks brought everyone in the kingdom running to her side, and Thor howled with such outrage that the entire kingdom of Asgard was shook. It was not long before Loki was searched out and brought before the hateful god. Thunder boomed in the sky as the cringing trickster fell to his knees before Thor. "I beg you, Thor, let me free, and I will find a new head of hair for Sif, one that is even more beautiful than one she has now. I'll go to the Dark Elves, Ashen One." Loki's head bobbed up and down with fright, and eventually Thor gave in 20 hours to come forward with the tresses. "And if you fail, Loki, you will be removed from Asgard forever." A thunderbolt at Loki's feet, and the traitor scampered away hastily, hardly daring to breathe. At his good fortune, Loki traveled at once to the center of the earth, to where the wily dwarf Dvalon at his home. He threw himself on the mercy of the dwarf, and requested as well 2 gifts, for which he could win the favor of Odin and Freya, who were bound to hear of the news, and wished to punish him themselves. Dvalon worked over the heat of his forge for many hours, and as he worked, he chanted the words which would make all he forged the finest there was, for there are no arms as powerful, as invincible, as those fashioned by dwarfs. First, he finished the spear, which would always hit its mark. Next, he formed the ship, which would always find wind, even on the most silent of seas, and which could sail through the air as well as on the water. The ship was folded carefully and placed in a tiny compass. Buki's eyes shunned its undoubted worth. Finally, the Valand spun the most graceful of golden threads. These he woggled into a head of hair, so lustrous and shining that all the Dark Elves gasped at its beauty. Dvalon handed it carefully to Loki, wrapped in the softest of tissues, and said, "As soon as this touches your princess's head, it shall grow there and become as her own. Loki took all the gifts from Dvalon, whom he thanked profusely, and feeling very pleased with himself, he set off for Asgard, with a skip in his step. His jauntiness attracted the attention of two dwarfs who sat by the side of a small cottage. "Why do you smile so?" asked the first. Loki's reputation had preceded him, and the dwarfs were certain that his happiness could have a virtuous cause. Dvalon, boasted Loki, is the most clever of smiths, both here and in all 9 worlds, and with that, held up his prizes for the dwarfs to examine. "That's pish," said the first dwarf, who was called Broki. "My brother Sindri can fashion gifts that are far more beautiful than those, and sturdier too." He paused and then continued, leaning towards Loki, and began to look rather put out. "Our gifts would hold the magic of the very center of the earth. I'll tell you this, Loki. Our gifts would hold the magic of the very center of the earth," he whispered. Loki choked, and then, recovering himself, immediately challenged the dwarf to prove his words. So confident was he of the gifts he held now, that he placed a wager on his own head. And so it was that Broki and Sindri made their way into the smithy, began work on the hottest of forges. Sindri agreed to fashion the goods on the condition that Brogi blew the bellows, task which would prove difficult over the great heat it was necessary for Sindri to win the wager. Sindri at once threw some gold into the fire, left the room eager to invoke the powers which would be invested in a great wild boar, which he had decided upon for Freya. Alone with the roaring fire, Loki worked hard at the pausing, despite the tremendous heat. Loki watched from the window, and as he observed the determination and the strength of the dwarf, he began to grow uneasy. At once, he decided that he must intervene, and as quick as a flash of light, he turned himself into a catfly and alighted on the hand of Broki, where he sat in a stinger so deep that a rush of blood rose to the surface immediately. Broki cried out in pain, but he continued the bellowing, never missing a beat. Sindri returned to the room and drew from the fire an enormous boar. This boar would have the strength of all other boars there were. He would have the additional ability to shine a rich and powerful light into any part of the world in which he traveled. It was the perfect gift for the sun god Freya. Nothing could match the brilliance of its light, the sun god himself. So Sindri flung more gold into the fire and instructed Broki to continue to blow. Once again, he left the room to seek the necessary enchantment. And once again, Loki took on the form of a gadfly. The instant he landed on Broki's cheek and stung through the weathered skin until Broki cried out and turned white with pain. But still, he worked on, pumping his bellows until Sindri returned once more. Untriumphant, Sindri drew from the fire a ring which would become the very symbol of fertility. For on every 9th night, 8 identical rings would drop from this ring with powers to match. The final gift was yet to be prepared. This time, Sindri threw iron onto the fire, leaving Broki hard at work as he left to call upon the final spirits. Broki's strength was beginning to flag, but his will was as strong as ever. He pumped away as the fire burned brighter and brighter, until suddenly a horsefly lit on his neck and stung him with a ferocity that caused him to leap into the air. But still, he did not miss even one pump of the bellows. Loki was becoming desperate. He arranged himself on the forehead of the hapless dwarf, and he stung straight into a vein on his forehead. Throbbed with effort, he was rewarded by a gush of blood that streamed out into the fire and into Broki's eyes. Worf raised his hand for a split second to wipe aside the blood, but that moment caused damage that could not be erased. When Sindri returned and drew out the great hammer, its handle was short, ungainly. Broki hung his head in disappointment. But Sindri pointed out powers of the great hammer more than make up for its small size. Indeed, he thought, it might be an advantage in that it could be easily hidden in a man's tunic. So Brokey gathered up the gifts, carried them outside to Loki, who accompanied the dwarf to Asgard with his booty. Odin was given the ring, Frey was given the boar, Thor was given the hammer. Loki then presented Sif with her golden hair, and when she placed it upon her shorn head, it latched itself there and began to grow in swirls and waves until it reached her feet once more, a shining veil of hair that shone more brightly than ever before. The spear was given to Odin and the ship to Frey. Each god was delighted with his gift, and there was much camaraderie as they slapped the back of the dwarfs and the redeemed Loki. It was Brokey who put a stop to the celebrations when he stepped forward and explained the wager that had been made by Loki. Gods looked at one another by their magnificent gifts. It was agreed that Sif's hair could not be more lustrous or more beautiful. Gods announced that Brokey's gifts were the finest and the most magical, for the sole reason that Thor's great hammer was of such a magnificent size that it could be hidden away and used against the frost giants at a moment's notice. Loki's games had backfired, turned on his heels and fled before Brokey could undertake his part of the bargain, and beheaded him. Loki started in outrage and implored Thor to come to his rescue, catching Loki, who was making away at full speed, still smarting from Sif's agony. Thor threw out a lightning bolt, caught Loki by the ankles, returning him to face his fate at the hands of Brokey and his brother. But when Loki was delivered to the dwarves, Thor took pity on Loki and insisted to Brokey that he could have Loki's head. He must not touch his neck, for the neck of Loki belonged to him. Thor, of course, there was no way to remove a head without touching the adjoining neck. Brokey stomped around in fury before he came up with a plan to serve him equally, gathering his brother's grate for the purpose. He punched holes along Loki's lips and stitched them together with an unbreakable cord. It was many days before Loki's howls of pain ceased, many more before he was able to unstitch the cord. Loki did not speak for almost 100 days, as his torn lips were so painful to move them. In time, however, Loki was able to speak once again, causing Thor and everyone in Asgard to rue the day. But the wager was broken. Thor had planned one of his regular trips to Jotunheim, and he set out on this occasion with Loki. It had not been many months since Loki had stolen Sif's hair, and Thor decided that it was safer for all if Loki was under his own keen eye. So it was. They set out in Thor's chariot, and as night fell, came upon the hut of a peasant who quested a bed for the night. The peasant lived in a small hut with his wife and 2 children, and although they did not have as much food to spare, they offered it all to Thor, who ate greedily. It soon became clear that there was not anywhere near enough food for all. So Thor took his 2 goats from the stable, where he'd put them for the night, and slew them, roasting them over the coals of the peasant's hearth, till the succulent meat slipped from the bones. He threw down his cloak onto the floor and requested that the bones be placed there. The peasant and his family were in ecstasy, for it had been many months since they had tasted fresh meat, and so carried away was the peasant himself, that when Thor looked away from his meal, he slyly cut into the bone of the goat leg and tasted the marrow was finished. Thor wrapped up the bones and placed them outside the door. The 2 guards settled down for the night. Thor opened the door, pulling aside his cloak, set free the 2 goats which had been reborn. He noticed, however, one of his goats was rather lame, and that his front right leg appeared to be damaged in some way, so that he found it difficult to walk. Thor was furious. He was furious that his commands had been so ravishly disregarded, and he realized that he would have to leave the goat behind, for it was too lame to travel. He thrust his great hammer into the air and was about to slaughter the entire family, and the peasant crept forward and confessed that he alone was the one who had eaten the bone. He begged Thor to show clemency to his family, and grudgingly, Thor agreed to take his 2 children, Thiavli, a strong young boy, and Roskva, a pretty girl, to be his lifelong servants as repayment. So the peasant was left with the goats, and the 4 set out on foot, the chariot left behind, until the crippled goat could walk again. Countryside was cold and sparse. Water they could find to drink was tainted by the smell of giants. Thor became ill, tempered. Eventually, it began to fall, and they were forced to find a place in which to sleep. Ahead of them was a great hall, and they approached it thankfully, curling up in its center to spend the night. Been sleeping for long, and there was a great banging in the earth. Began to rock and shake. The peasant's 2 children moaned with fear, but Thor pressed his hands over their mouths and bid them to follow him into an alcove, which led off to the side of the hall. They huddled and at last slept. When morning dawned, the 4 weary travelers made their way from the hall and stopped with a start, for there lay sleeping a giant, bigger than any they had ever seen before. His snores laid flat the sparse vegetation, and the peasant's children hurled themselves behind Thor in fright. Eventually, the giant opened one sleepy eye, caught sight of Thor and his party. He snorted and sat up, speaking in a loud, rumbling voice. "So, you are the ones who dared to make your camp in my mitten surprise," and his eyes settled on the great hall in which they had managed to find shelter. The hall was none other than the giant's mitten. The alcove had the thumb Thor stepped forward and identified himself, and in return, the giant said his name was Vasti. Vasti seemed a friendly giant. He suggested that the 2 parties put together their provisions and travel on together. Thor agreed, for it would do them no harm to have the additional assistance of a giant should they encounter trouble on their travels, and so they set off. Thor, Loki, and the children scuttling along in the giant's footsteps. The day was long and difficult. Even the great Thor struggled to keep up with the immense strides of the giant. And when it came to eat and to rest, he was as grateful as the others. Masti opened his sack, removed a large piece of meat, which he consumed in a few moments, grunted, and passed the sack to Thor, and then turned on his side and fell into a deep sleep, his noisy snores disrupting the landscape once again. Thor reached greedily for the bag. They had had no sustenance all day, and all 4 of them were weak with hunger. He struggled with the cord and stamped and shouted despite his greatest efforts. He was unable to fasten the knots tied by Vasti. Lucky then took the opportunity to weave his own magic on the knots, but they remained tightly fastened. Loki and the children settled down to sleep, too cold and hungry to bother any farther. Thor was irate. Giants snoring made it impossible to sleep, and he was more hungry than he'd been since the day of his conception. Finally, he lifted up his great hammer, banged it down with all the force he could muster onto the giant's head. Vasti turned and muttered, and called out in his sleep. The leaf which had dropped on him was a nuisance, and then he fell back into a deep sleep and left Thor to gaze at him in astonishment. A few moments later, he tried again, this time invoking a series of enchantments to make his blow even more supremely powerful, and he hit Vasti upon the brow. Deep enough, the hammer was embedded in the giant's skull. Thor dragged it out and waited for the inevitable shriek of pain. Masti only turned again in his sleep, playing about a bit of bark that must have fallen on him from the trees above. Thor had never been so infuriated. Everyone knew that he was invincible. His powers were stronger than any on Earth, and yet, with his fine hammer, he was unable to make the slightest dent on the sleeping giant. tried one last time, and when Vasti started, only slightly, and suggested that perhaps an acorn had fallen upon his head, Thor gave up and tried to settle down to sleep. He slept not a wink that night, and when Vasti rose early on the morrow, he was in a fiery mood. Vasti had gone as far as he could with Thor and his men, and he would be traveling on to his own home across the icy mountains, carefully pointed out the way to the castle of Utgard, Loki, king of the giants. But before he left, Vasti spoke quietly to the travelers and told them that they would find giants even larger than he at this palace. They should turn back now, he suggested, for he could not guarantee them any safety if they went on alone. But Thor was too fractious to listen to his warnings, and they went on towards the palace. Through short hours they had arrived. Tiny sighs of the gods meant that it was easy for them to slip between the bars of the fence surrounding the castle, and soon enough they had made their way to the inner chambers. The sanctuary of Utgard, Loki himself. The king of the gods was, as Vasti had promised, larger than all giants, fierce of countenance and expression. He laughed uproariously when he saw Thor. "We have tales of you, Thor," he said, "and we know who you are by that red beard. We didn't expect you to be so small." And with that, he broke into laughter, sending Thor into spasms of anger. "My size is of no importance," he said stoutly. "I am capable of feats that men of all sizes would find impossible." Loki, who had also suffered enough on their journey, leapt forward in Thor's defense. "We shall challenge you to beat our many talents," he shouted. "And to begin with, I challenge you to find someone in your ranks who can eat a meal more quickly than I can." Now Loki was more confident of winning such a feat, for he had an appetite that was keener than most gods at the best of times. Here, he was virtually starving after 2 days without any food, king, and signaled to his cook to join them. Table was laden with platters of bones, gravy, and huge slices of dripping meat. At the sound of the horn, the cook and Loki began to eat. Loki ate ravenously, devouring meat and gravy with gusto, enhanced by the powers he had called down to help him. At the sound of the horn, he stopped and looked around. King pointed to the other end of the table. Loki stopped in his tracks. Not only had the cook eaten all the meat and gravy at his side of the table, he had even eaten the bones, the platters, table as well. God Loki the king smiled with a wave of his hand, dismissed Loki, who hung his head in shame, stepped forward next, and held up his hand for silence. "Hereby challenge any man or giant to drink a greater draught than me." "Door!" he shouted. Horn was dragged before Thor. The giant Kang smiled once again. "A challenge Thor shall be met," he said. "You'll see before you a horn which can, by our champion, be drunk in 1 or 2 great swords. Let us see you match that." So, Thor placed his mouth around the great vessel, which stretched the entire length of the room, and drawing in a deep breath, he began to drink. He sucked in the liquid, and after moments without breathing, he stopped, crept along the length of the horn to see how deeply he had drunk. The horn was full. The level of the drink had not moved even the tiniest percentage. Thor shook his head in amazement. He knew his capacity for drinking was greater than anyone's, and yet he could not make any real dent in the contents of the horn. He swallowed again, and then spat on the floor. "Salty," he muttered to himself, and sat down. "Utgard." Loki nodded his head and said quietly, "Expected more." Viavi, the peasant's son, had had enough of the taunting. He had grown to love Thor in the days they had been together, and he quickly leapt to his defense, volunteering himself for a race with the quickest of the giants. But Loki put forward his quickest man, a young giant called Hugi. 2 boys lined up, and the race began. It seemed that the first race had been a draw, for both men, appeared to reach the finish line at the same moment. And so, another race was called, lined up once again. As the bell went, and as the LV lifted his foot to set off in the direction of the finish, Huggy raced to the line and back. The race was over, and this time there was no question of who had won. "Well, well," said Utgard, Loki, roaring with laughter. "There are not many tricks to your trade, are there, Thor?" To which the angry god trembled, but said, "What do you say?" shouted Utgard, Loki, looking furiously at the crowd of giants who had arrived to watch this spectacle. "Try to raise our pretty kitty," pointed to a giant cat who reclined gracefully in the corner of the hall. Thor's pride had taken a beating. He was determined to prove himself. Surely it would not be difficult to lift a cap. He strolled purposefully towards the cat, who yawned and licked her paw before sitting up. He tightened his belt, which made him stronger, and then he tugged and pulled with all his might. Only one paw was lifted from the ground, and despite his every effort, he could not move her. He lifted him carefully with the paw he'd managed to lift back once again, her tail flicking to and fro in the sunlight. Thor looked towards the giant king and asked for one final challenge. Said the king. "This one person in the household may be suitable to wrestle with you. May I introduce to you my nurse, the 100-year-old Ellie?" There was great laughter amongst the crowd as Ellie crept forth, hardly able to hold herself upright. Thor moved quickly towards her and pulled and shoved until Utgard Loki called for him to stop. Thor, swallowed with difficulty, was bewildered, and he was furious. He stared at Utgard Loki and said quietly, "I have been beaten. Till this day, I thought there was no one greater than I. You have shown me my place, and for that, I must respect you." Thor signaled to Tjelvi and Roskva, and with Loki on one arm, to leave the hall, defeated and humiliated. But Utgard, Loki, the giant king, called out in a voice that was once humane and conciliatory. "You have come here today against my will," he said proudly. "This is our home. You are not welcome here. Your show of strength is not welcome here. I was forced to do something to keep you away forever." That giant transformed, and in an instant he became Vasti. "Recognize me?" he said, "when I lay sleeping just last night. Took the precaution of placing a mountain over my head, one which was invisible to you, Thor. It is just as well, for it seems that you are unable to open the magic cord of my sack. You took it upon yourself to hit the mountain." There he paused, and casting open a curtain, gesticulated out the window at a series of valleys surrounding the mountain on the horizon. "Those valleys," he said solemnly, "are the blows you aimed to my head." Thor gasped, but said nothing, waiting for the king to continue. Continue he did, Loki's opponent. Been none other than Wildfire, the Elfi's racing partner. Been the king's thoughts. Been none as swift as these. Thor's drinking horn had been dipped one end into the ocean, and no matter how deeply he had drunk, the ocean would have remained undrinkable. Commented that the tides of the ocean been altered by Thor's great swallows. Then he hurriedly went on. Was in reality Jormungandr, the world serpent. Thor not heard the gasp of terror. It seemed as though Thor may be responsible for removing the serpent's tail from its mouth. Everyone there knew what chaos would exist when such an occurrence would happen, for it had been prophesied that the end of the world would be nigh. Eli was old age itself, and he had nearly unseated her. In all, Thor had been successful in many ways. "You may hold your head high," said the giant proudly. "Please, Thor, do not return to our shores." Thor was only slightly placated by the king's explanations, and he lifted his powerful hammer to bring an end to the lifestyle of Utgard, Loki, and his men. But as quickly as he could lift his hammer, Castle was enveloped in a sea of mist, and he could see nothing. The world of the giants was completely enshrouded, and Thor had no recourse but to return home to Asgard. His mission was incomplete, and Thor had been branded a puny weakling in the eyes of the giant. He had faced many of nature's most formidable enemies, and had left his mark for that, not of war, but stand tall once again. Balder was the beautiful, radiant god of light and innocence. Each life that he touched glowed with goodness, and he was loved by all who knew him. His twin brother Hodor, who was blind, and Balder tended to him with every kindness and consideration. Hodor worshipped Balder, and would do nothing in his power to harm him. There came a morning when Balder woke with the dawn. His face tightened with fear and foresight, dreamed of his own death, and he lay there, trified, aware somehow. The strength of this dream forecasted sinister things to come. So Baldur traveled to see Odin, who listened carefully and knew at once the fears of his son were justified. For in his shining eyes, there was no longer simply innocence, there was knowledge as well. Odin went at once to his throne, at the top of the Yggdrasil, and he prayed there for a vision to come to him. Once he saw the head, Vala, the seer, come to him, and he knew he must travel to Hel's kingdom to visit Vala's grave. He would learn the truth, his favorite son's fate. It was many long days before Odin reached the innermost gates on Hel's estate. He moved quietly, so that Hel would not know of his coming, and he was disregarded by most of the workers in her lands, for they were intent on some celebrations and were preparing the hall for the arrival of an esteemed guest. At last, the mound of Vala's grave appeared, and he sat there on it, keeping his head so low that the prophetess would not catch a glimpse of his face, was a seer of all things future and all things past, and there was nothing that escaped her bright eyes, and she could be called upon only by magic of the ruins to tell her of knowledge. The grave was wreathed in shadows, and a mist hung uneasily over the tombstone. There was a silence, as Uldun whispered to Vala to come forth. "Uldun's brother will slay him," said Vala, and with that she withdrew into her grave. Uldun leapt up and cried out, "Power of the ruins, you must tell me more. Tell me, Vala, which esteemed guest does Hel prepare for?" "Balder," she muttered, from the depths of the grave, "and I will say no more." Odin shook his head with concern, not see how it could be possible that Balder's brother would take his life. Balder and Hodor, closest of brothers, and shared the same thoughts, and indeed speech for much of the time. He returned to Asgard with his concerns still intact, and he discussed them there with Frigga, who listened carefully. "I have a plan," she announced, "and I am certain you will agree that this is the best course of action for all of us. I plan to travel through all 9 lands, and I will seek the pledge. Every living creature, every plant, every metal and stone, to harm Balder." Frigga was as good as her word, for on the morrow she set out and traveled far and wide, everywhere she went, extracting with ease the promise of every living creature, and inanimate object to love Balder, to see that he was not injured in any way, and so it was. Balder was immune to injury of any kind, and it became a game among the children of Asgard to aim their spears and arrows at him and laugh as they bounced off, leaving him unharmed. Balder was adorned throughout the worlds, and there was no one who did not smile when he spied him. No one, that is, except Loki, whose jealousy of Balder had reached an unbearable pitch. Each night he ruminated over the ways in which he could murder Balder, and he could think of none. Frigga had taken care to involve all possible dangers in her oath, and there was nothing now that would hurt him. But the scheming Loki was not unwise, and soon he came up with the transforming himself into a beggar woman. He knocked on Frigga's door and requested a meal. Frigga was pleased to offer her hospitality, and she sat down to keep the beggar company as she ate. In his disguise, chatted on about the handsome Balder who he'd seen in the hall. And he mentioned his fears. Balder would be killed by one of the spears and arrows he had seen hurled at him. Figgle laughed and explained that Balder was now invincible. "Everything swear an oath to you, then?" asked Loki, slyly. "Oh yes," said Frigga, but then she paused. "All that is, except for a funny little plant which was growing at the base of the oak tree at Valhalla, for set eyes on such a little shoot of greenery, and it was far too immature to swear to anything so important as my oath. What's it called?" asked Loki again. Said Frigga, still unaware of the dangers her information might invoke. "Mistletoe, yes. Mistletoe." Loki thanked Frigga hastily for his meal and left her palace, transforming at once into his mischievous self, and traveling to Valhalla as quickly as his feet would take him. He carefully plucked up the budding mistletoe and returned to Odin's hall, played with the younger gods and goddesses as they shot him unsuccessfully with arms of every shape and size. Hodor was standing frowning in the corner. Loki whispered for him to come over. "Is it Hodor?" he asked. "Nothing, really. Just that I cannot join their games," said Hodor quietly. "With me," said Loki, "for I can help." Leading Hotta into a position close to Balder, he placed in his hands a bow and arrow, fashioned from the fleetest of fabrics. To the end of the arrow, he tied a small leaf of mistletoe and chopped the razor sharp with a plump white berry. "Shoot now," cried to Hotta. "Arrow soar towards its target." There was a sharp gasp. There was silence. Hotta shook his head with surprise. Where were the happy shouts? Where was the laughter telling him that his own arrow had hit his mark and failed to harm the victim? The silence spoke volumes, for Balder lay dead in a circle of admirers, as pale and frightened as if they had seen Hel herself. The agony spread across Asgard like a great wave. When it was discovered who had shot the fatal blow, Hodor was sent far from his family and left alone in the wilderness. He had not yet had a moment to utter the name of the god who had encouraged him to penetrate this grave crime, and his misery kept him silent. Frigga was drowning in grief. She begged Hermod, the swiftest of her sons, to set out at once to Filheim, to beg Hel to release Baldur to them all. And so he climbed upon Odin's finest steed and set out for the 9 worlds of Hel, a task so fearsome that he shook uncontrollably. In Asgard, Frigga and Odin carried their son's body to the sea, where a funeral pyre was created and lit. Nanna, Baldur's wife, could bear it no longer, and before the fire was set out on the sea, she threw herself on the flames and perished there with her only love. As a token of their great affection and esteem, the gods offered, one by one, their most prized possessions, and laid them on the pyre as it set out for the wild seas. Hultan produced his magic ring, and the greatest gods of Asgard gathered to see the passing of Balder, and so the blazing ship left the shore with full sail set, and then darkness swallowed it, and Balder had gone. Throughout this time, Hermod had been traveling at great speed towards Hel. He rode for 9 days, 9 nights, never taking a moment to sleep. He galloped on and on, bribing the watchman of each gate to let him past and invoking the name of Balder as the reason for his journey. At last, he reached the Hall of Hel, where he found Balder sitting easily with Nanna, great comfort and looking quite content. Hel stood by his side, keeping a close watch on her newest visitor. He looked up at Hermod with disdain, for everyone knew that once a spirit had reached hell, it could not be released. But Hermod fell on one knee, icy mistress, to reconsider her hold over Balder. "Please, Queen Hel, without Balder, we cannot survive. There can be no future for Asgard without his presence," he cried. She held out for 3 days and 3 nights, while Hermod stayed her side, offering every conceivable reason why Balder should be released. Finally, Queen of Darkness gave in. "Return at once to Asgard," she said harshly. "And if what you say is true, if everything in Asgard loves Balder and cannot live without him, everything living and inanimate, then he will be released. If there is even one dissenter, if there is even one stone in your land, does not mourn the passing of Balder, he shall remain here with me." Hermod was gladdened by this news, for he knew that everyone, including Hodor, who had sent the fatal arrow flying through the air, loved Balder. He agreed to these terms at once and set off for Asgard, relaying himself and his news with speed that astonished all who saw him arrive. Odin sent his messengers to all corners of the universe, asking for tears to be shed for Balder. As they traveled, everyone and everything began to weep, until a torrent of water rushed across the Tree of Life, and after everyone had been approached, and each had shed his tears, the messengers made their way back to Odin's palace with glee. Baldur would be released, could be no doubt, but it was not meant to be. As the last messenger traveled back to the palace, he noticed the form of an old beggar woman, hidden in the darkness of a cave. He approached her then and bid her to cry for Balder, but she did not. Her eyes remained dry. The uproar was carried across to the palace. Odin himself came to see dry eyes, whose inability to shed tears cost him the life of his son. He stared into those eyes, and he saw then what the messenger had failed to see. Frigga had failed to see what had truly caused the death of Balder. For those eyes belonged to none other than Loki, and it was he who had murdered Balder. As surely as if the arrow had left his own hands, the sacred code of Asgard had been broken, for blood had been spilled, one of their own. The world was nigh first. Loki would be punished once and for all. The wrath of the gods was so great that Asgard shuddered and shook as Odin looked down upon Loki in the form of the beggar woman and decision to punish him. Loki transformed himself into a fly and disappeared, although he was crafty. Even his most supreme efforts to save himself were as nothing in the face of Odin's determination to trace him. Loki traveled far to the distant mountains, and on the peak of the most isolated of them all, here he built a cabin with windows and doors on all sides, so that he could see the enemy approaching and flee from any side before they reached him. By day, he haunted a pool by a rushing waterfall, taking the shape of a salmon. His life was uncomplicated, and although he was forced to live by his wits, and the fear of the gods' revenge was great, Loki was not unhappy. From his throne above the worlds, Odin watched and waited, and when he saw that Loki had grown complacent and no longer looked with quite such care from his many windows, he struck. It was one particular evening. Loki sat weaving. He had just invented what we today call a fish net, and as he worked, he hummed to himself, dancing every now and then from his great windows, and then back at his work. Once were almost upon him, he first noticed them, and they were led by Kvasir, who was known amongst all gods for his wisdom and ability to unravel the tricks of even the most seasoned trickster. And as he saw them arriving, Loki fled from the back door and transformed himself into a salmon and leapt into the ponds, stood in the doorway. Surveying the room, Kvasir walked over to the fishing net and examined it closely. His eyes caught a glimmer of fish scales on the floor. and he nodded sagely. "It is my assessment," he said, "that our Loki has become a fish," and he held up the fishing net. "We will catch him with his own web," which made their way to the stream, which lay at the bottom of the waterfall. Throwing the net into the water, waited for daybreak, when Loki the salmon entered the waters and be caught in his own net. Of course, Loki was too clever to be trapped so easily, and he swam beneath the net, and far away from that part of the pond where the gods were fishing. Vasir soon realized their mistake, and he ordered that rocks be placed at the bottom of the net, so that none could swim beneath it. Waited. Loki looked with amusement at the gods' trap, and gracefully soared through the air above the net, his eyes glinting in the early morning light. And as his fins were just inches from the water, when he was so close to escape that he had begun to plan his celebrations, 2 firm hands were thrust out. He was lifted into the air. He hardly dared look at his captor, and he began to tremble when he saw that it was none other than Thor, who had moved so swiftly to catch him. "You to take your own form, Loki," he shouted, holding tight to the smooth scales of the salmon. Loki knew he was beaten. Quietly, he transformed himself once again into Loki, only to find himself hung over by the heels of the rippling waters. And as Thor raised his great hammer to beat Loki to death, reached out and stopped him. It was Odin, and he spoke gently, with enormous purpose. For this rodent, he whispered, "Take him at once to the Hell's worlds, and tie him there for good." And so it was that Loki was taken to Filheim, where Thor grabbed 3 massive rocks, and 4 a platform for the hapless trickster. Then, Loki's 2 sons, Vali and Nari, brought forth. An enchantment was laid upon Vali, so that he took the form of a wolf and attacked his brother Nari, tearing him to pieces in front of his anguished father. To carry up Nari's entrails, which were now endowed with magic properties, he tied Loki's limbs so that he lay across the 3 rocks. Unable to move, the entrails would tighten with every effort he made to escape. And to ensure that he could not use trickery to free himself, Thor placed the rocks on a precipice. One false move, and he could be sent crashing to his death in the canyon below. Finally, Skadi caught a poisonous snake and trapped it by its tail, so that it hung over Loki's face, dripping venom into his mouth, so that he screamed with pain and terror. It began to convulse. It was such a terrible sight. His wife rushed forward to be allowed to stand beside him, holding a ball with which to collect the poison. God's was done. They turned there. His wife remained with her husband, ever true to her wedding. Every day or so, she moved from her position at his side in order to empty her bowl, when Loki's convulsions brought an earthquake to Asgard that lasted just as long as it took her to return with her bowl. They remained there till the end of time, for the gods is. The end of time was nigh. It was Ragnarok. The end of the world had been prophesied from its beginning. Everyone across the world knew what to expect when Ragnarok fell upon them. For Ragnarok was the twilight of the gods, an end to the golden years of Asgard, an end to the palaces of delight, an end to the timeless world where nothing could interfere. It was the death of Balder that set the stage for the end of the world was Loki's crimes, which had laid in place the main characters. The action had begun. There was no stopping it. Evil entered Asgard. It tainted all 9 worlds. Sol and Mani, high in the sky, paled with fright, and their chariots slowed as they moved with effort across the sky. They knew that the wolves would soon be upon them, and that it would only be a matter of time before eternal darkness would fall once again. But Sol and Mani had been devoured. There was no light to shine on the earth, and the terrible cold crept into the warm reaches of summer and drew from the soil what was growing there. Snow began to drift down upon the freezing land. and soon it snowed a little faster and a little harder, till the earth was covered once again. In a dark layer of ice, the terror was upon them, not seas. For 3 long frozen seasons, it was winter, and then, after a thaw, melted only one single layer of ice. It was back for 3 more. With the cold and the darkness came evil, rooted itself in the hearts of men. Soon crime was rampant, and all shreds of human kindness disappeared with the spring. At last, the stars were flung from the skies, causing the earth to tremble and shake. Loki and Fenris were freed from their manacles, and together they moved forward to wreak their revenge on the gods and men who had bound so cruelly. At the bottom of Yggdrasil there was a groan emanated the entire length of the tree. For at that moment, Nithog had gnawed through the root of the world tree, which quivered and shook from the bottom. Heimdall knew at once what was upon them, and raising his mighty horn to his lips, he blew the call that filled the heart of the gods and mankind with terror. Ragnarok sprang from their beds, thrust aside the finery that hung in their bedchambers. They armed themselves and mounted their horses, ready for the war that had been expected since the beginning of time. They moved quickly over the Rainbow Bridge, and they reached the field of Vigrid, where the last battle would be fought. Turmoil on earth caused the seas to toss and twist with waves, and soon the world serpent was woken from his deep sleep. Movement of the seas yanked the serpent's tail from his mouth, and it lashed around, sending waves crashing in every direction. As the serpent crawled out upon the land for the first time, tidal waves swelled across the earth and set afloat the ship of the dead, which had been constructed from the nails of the dead, whose relatives had failed in their duties and had neglected to pare the nails of the deceased when they were laid to rest. As the wind caught the blackened sail, Loki leapt aboard and took her wheel, a ship of the undead, captained by the personification of all evil. Loki called upon the fire gods from Muspel, and they arrived in terrible glory. Another ship had set out for Fikret. This was steered by Harum, crewed by the frost giants, who had waited many centuries for this battle, crossed the raging seas, both vessels made for the battlefield. As they traveled, prepped from her underground estate, bringing with her Nethok and the hell Hound Garm. From up above, there was a great crack, and Seter with sword blazing leapt with his sons to the Bifrost Bridge. From up above, there was a great crack, and Seter with his sword blazing, with his sons Bifrost Bridge, and with one swoop they felled it, and sent a shimmering rainbow crashing to the depths below. Quickly, Odin escaped from the battlefield and slipped one last time to the Urdar fountain, where the Norn sat quietly, accepting their fate. He leant over Mimir and requested her wisdom. For once, the head would not talk to him, and he remounted his horse and returned to the field, frightened and aware that he had no powers left which to defend his people. The opposing armies lined themselves up on Vigrid Field. On one side were the Aesir, the Vanir, the other the fire giants, the frost giants, the undead with hell, and Loki with his children, who was filled with poison and the stench of evil from the opposing army. Yet the gods held up their heads and prepared for a battle to end all time. And so it was. The ancient enemies came to blows. Odin first met with the evil Fenris, and as he charged towards the fierce wolf, Fenris's massive jaws stretched open, and Odin was flung deep into the red throat. Thor stopped in his tracks, the death of his father burning deep in his breast. With renewed fury, he lunged at the world serpent. Engaging in a combat that would last for many hours, his hammer laid blow after blow on the serpent, and at last there was silence. Thor sat back, exhaustion, Balmungandr at his side. But as Thor made to move forward, carry on and support his kin in further battles, The massive serpent exhaled one last time in a cloud poisoned soul. File that Thor fell at once, lifeless in the mists of the serpent's breath. Met Loki, hand to hand, and the forces of good and evil enraged in the battle that had been raging for all time. Their flames engulfed one another. There was a flash of light, and then was nothing. The silent Vidar came rushing from a distant part of the plain to avenge the death of Odin, and he laid upon the jaw of Fenris a shoe which had been created for this day. With his arms and legs in motion, he tore the wolf's head from his body, and then lay back in a pool of blood of all the gods. Only Frey was left fighting, battled valiantly, and as he laid down giant after giant, he felt a warmth on the back of his neck. It meant only one thing. Heat burned and sizzled his skin. As he turned, he found himself face to face. The cedar, cry of rage that howled through the torn land and shook the massive stem of the world ash. Yggdrasil. Sittar flung down bolts of fire that engulfed the golden palaces of the gods and each of the worlds which lay beneath it. The heat caused the seas to bubble and to boil, and there came at once a wreath of smoke blotted out the fire. And then the world, at last, all was as it had been in the beginning. There was blackness, there was chaos, there was a nothingness that stretched as far as there was space.